The beast incarnate is broken. Brock Lesnar, the man who's conquered everyone from The Undertaker to John Cena to Roman Reigns, the most dominant physical specimen in WWE history, the former UFC heavyweight champion who's destroyed opponents in legitimate combat sports, is in critical condition right now because Femi and Omas just did the unthinkable. They didn't just attack Brock Lesnar, they systematically dismantled him in a coordinated assault so brutal, so professionally executed, so absolutely devastating that Lesnar had to be stretchered out of the arena with injuries that could legitimately end his career. And if you think this was just another wrestling beatdown, if you believe Lesnar will bounce back next week like nothing happened, you're not understanding the severity of what we just witnessed. This wasn't storytelling, this was an execution, and the entire landscape of WWE has been permanently altered in ways that nobody saw coming. The attack happened at the worst possible moment for Lesnar, which is exactly why it was so effective. After a grueling match where Brock had already taken significant punishment, where his stamina was depleted and his guard was down, Femi's music hit. The crowd reacted with confusion and excitement, remembering Femi's previous confrontation with Lesnar, anticipating another intense stare-down or verbal exchange. What they got instead was carnage that will be replayed and analyzed for years as the moment two relative unknowns destroyed WWE's most protected superstar. Femi walked down the ramp with purpose, but he wasn't alone. Flanking him was Omas, another massive powerhouse from NXT who most of the main roster audience had barely heard of. Standing together, these two presented a combined 700 pounds of muscle, youth, and hunger that represented everything Lesnar used to be 20 years ago. The visual alone was intimidating. Two younger, fresher predators approaching an exhausted legend who suddenly realized he was in serious danger. Paul Heyman immediately started screaming warnings, trying to position himself between Lesnar and the approaching threat, but Femi grabbed Heyman by his suit jacket and tossed him out of the ring like discarding trash. The special counsel, the wise man, the mouthpiece who's talked Brock out of countless dangerous situations, rendered completely irrelevant in 3 seconds. That moment told everyone watching that this wasn't going to be a conversation, it was going to be a statement written in violence. First question for the comments, had you even heard of Omas before this attack, or did WWE just introduce him by having him help destroy Brock Lesnar? Drop your answer because this is the most controversial debut in recent memory. Brock Lesnar, despite being exhausted, is still Brock Lesnar. He charged at Femi with the kind of explosive power that's ended countless matches in seconds, but Femi was ready, catching Lesnar's momentum and redirecting it into a devastating spinebuster that shook the entire ring. Before Lesnar could recover, Omas was on him, delivering clubbing forearms that sounded like gunshots echoing through the arena. The coordination between Femi and Omas was terrifying in its efficiency. They weren't brawling wildly. They were executing a game plan, targeting specific body parts, cutting off the ring, preventing Lesnar from using his superior experience to create separation or escape. This was clearly rehearsed, clearly planned, clearly designed to inflict maximum damage in minimum time before help could arrive. Lesnar managed to fight back briefly, landing a German suplex on Omas that would have finished most opponents, but Omas rolled through and popped back up, barely phased, which seemed to genuinely shock Brock. The beast incarnate has spent 20 years destroying people with suplexes, and this newcomer just absorbed one like it meant nothing. The psychological impact was immediate and visible, Lesnar realizing he was in a fight unlike any he'd experienced in WWE. Femi capitalized on Lesnar's momentary hesitation, hitting a devastating lariat that turned Brock inside out. The impact was sickening, the kind of move that makes you wince even knowing it's performed by professionals trained to minimize injury. Lesnar crashed to the mat, and the systematic destruction began in earnest. What happened next wasn't wrestling, it was a mugging. Femi and Omas took turns delivering punishment while the other held Lesnar in position, preventing any chance of comeback or escape. Power bombs, slams, strikes that looked like they were landing with full force. Each move built on the previous one, targeting Lesnar's back, his ribs, his neck, the areas most vulnerable after an already exhausting match. Comment your reaction. Did this beatdown make Femi and Omas look like legitimate main event threats, or did it damage Brock Lesnar's credibility beyond repair? This is the debate tearing the wrestling community apart right now. The crowd reaction shifted from excitement to genuine concern as the assault continued without interference. Where was security? Where were the locker room babyfaces who usually rush out to stop this kind of attack? The absence of anyone coming to Lesnar's aid made this feel more real, more dangerous, more like we were witnessing something WWE didn't have control over. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, but was probably 3 or 4 minutes of continuous violence, officials and referees flooded the ring. But they didn't separate the attackers from the victim. They formed a protective barrier around Brock Lesnar's motionless body, while Femi and Omas backed away voluntarily, their mission accomplished, their message sent. The medical staff's response told you everything about the severity of Lesnar's condition. They weren't helping him up or checking for storyline injuries. They were performing legitimate medical assessments, checking his neck mobility, testing his responsiveness, following concussion protocols that you only see when someone might be genuinely hurt. The stretcher wasn't a prop for dramatic effect. It was a medical necessity to transport someone who couldn't safely leave the ring under their own power. As Lesnar was being loaded onto the stretcher, neck brace applied, completely motionless except for labored breathing, Femi grabbed a microphone. What he said next cemented this as one of the most significant moments in modern wrestling history. This is the new era. The age of monsters who coast on reputation is over. Brock Lesnar was the measuring stick, and we just broke him in half. Every legend, every part-timer, every supposedly untouchable superstar, you're all next. WWE belongs to us now. The arrogance was staggering, but backed by the visual of Brock Lesnar being stretchered out, it was impossible to dismiss as empty boasting. Femi and Omas had just done what seemed impossible. They made Brock Lesnar look vulnerable, beatable, mortal. The mystique that's defined Lesnar's entire WWE career, the aura of invincibility that survived losses to only the absolute biggest stars, was shattered by 2 performers most people didn't know existed a week ago. The immediate social media reaction was nuclear. Twitter exploded with fans demanding explanations, crying foul at Lesnar's treatment, celebrating the emergence of new monsters, questioning WWE's creative direction, everything all at once in a chaotic mess of passionate responses. This is what wrestling is supposed to generate, genuine emotional investment that transcends the performance and becomes real feelings about fictional events. Drop your take. Should WWE have protected Brock Lesnar more carefully, or is it brilliant to sacrifice his aura to instantly establish Femi and Omas as credible main event threats? Your booking philosophy matters here. The backstage reports paint an even grimmer picture of Lesnar's condition. According to sources close to the situation, Brock was immediately transported to a local hospital for comprehensive evaluation. The official WWE statement was carefully worded corporate speak. Brock Lesnar is undergoing medical evaluation following an attack by Femi and Omas. We will provide updates as appropriate. Translation: he's legitimately hurt. We don't know the extent, and we're trying to manage the PR nightmare of our biggest star being destroyed by unknowns. The injuries being speculated based on how the attack unfolded are concerning. Potential concussion from the repeated strikes to the head, possible rib injuries from the power bombs and slams, back trauma from the targeted assault on his spine, and general systemic shock from absorbing that much punishment in a compromised state. Any one of these could sideline Lesnar for months. Multiple injuries together could end his career, especially for someone in their late 40s whose body has already absorbed decades of professional fighting punishment. Paul Heyman's response has been uncharacteristically quiet, which tells you how serious this situation is. The man who can talk his way out of or into any situation, who's built a career on verbal brilliance, has barely said a word publicly. His only statement was a brief post. What happened to Brock Lesnar was attempted murder dressed as wrestling. There will be consequences. The restraint suggests either he's being legally advised to stay quiet or he's so genuinely shaken by what happened that his usual performative confidence has evaporated. The Omas element of this attack adds layers of complexity and controversy. Unlike Femi, who at least had some main roster exposure and the NXT North American Championship to establish credibility, Omas was essentially a complete unknown, making his debut by helping hospitalize the most protected star in company history. The audacity is either brilliant or insane, with no middle ground. Omas brings legit